Hey, my name's Tyreek, and I want to ask you a question. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to hide how you really felt? Like your face was saying one thing, but your mind was saying something completely different. Like maybe you got this Christmas present from your grandparents, and it was the ugliest sweater that you've ever saw. But you had to look at your grandparents and be like, Nana, this is great. I've always wanted this. Or maybe one of your friends got some new shoes, and you know those shoes aren't that cool. And so you're looking at them and they're like, hey man, how do my shoes look? And you know they're ugly. And so you're like, hey man, those shoes are great. But you know in your heart, they're not that good at all. Or maybe your parents said, hey, you know what? That party you've been asking me to go to, this is your week. You can finally do it. You can go. And then at the last minute, they say, hey, you know what? I'm sorry, but you can't go to that party. And on the inside, you're so disappointed, but on the outside, you're like, Mom and Dad, you know best. I will never forget. I was 8 years old and I really loved Power Rangers. And all I wanted for my birthday was this Power Ranger toy. And my mom knew this, and my dad knew this, and my brother knew this. And they knew that's all that I wanted. And so I wake up, it's my birthday, I'm getting ready to go to school, but I knew they were gonna give me my present before I went to school. So I get up really quick, I get dressed, I go in the living room, and the only thing in the living room was clothes. We're not even talking cool clothes. We just talking like clothes that no one would ever want, let alone on your birthday. And I sat there and they watched my face and I had to fake it. I had to act like, hey, this is exactly what I wanted, even though all of y'all know I wanted that Power Ranger toy. We've all felt that way, right? Like we know what it's like to think and hide something how we really feel. And you don't wanna hurt anyone's feelings or disappoint anybody or make a big deal or even cause trouble. So you keep quiet about whatever it is going on in your heart and your mind. And let's be honest here. I think we sometimes feel this way about God. Sometimes the hardest feelings to be honest about are our feelings towards God. Why? Well, there's a lot of reasons. And maybe it was because someone told you that you had to. Maybe you feel like all the questions you have about some of the things that God asked Christians to do are just unfair. Things like forgiving others or always being obedient to your parents all the time. But because of the things people in church have told you, you feel like you're not supposed to feel that way about God. For others of you, maybe it's because you think God doesn't care about how you feel. He gives you a list of do's and don'ts, and that's it. Don't go to this party. Don't hang out with this friend. Don't watch this on Netflix. Do pray. Do go to church. Do give your money away. In other words, do the things that don't sound exciting, but don't do the things that do sound exciting. In that case, it doesn't really matter how you feel, does it? God already made the rules and we just have to live by them and we have to follow them. Or maybe you don't even know if you believe in God at all. You have a lot of feelings and questions and thoughts about what's happening in the world, but you're not even sure if God is out there. So what's the difference in telling him how I feel about what's going on? Would he even listen if he was out there? Or maybe like me, you've gone through something really hard in your life. It was painful and difficult to understand at the time. Maybe it still is. During that time, you wanted more than anything to tell God how you felt, that you were afraid or angry or disappointed or alone, or that you didn't even want to talk to God. But you don't think that's how you're supposed to talk to God. So you just hide your feelings. No matter where you land, I think we can have all kinds of feelings about God. Some of us are mad at God and we don't think that we can say it. And some of us feel like we can't share how we really feel because in some weird way, it makes us a bad Christian. Some of us may be embarrassed or ashamed to admit that we don't agree with what God is doing all the time. And if we're being honest, and I want you to be honest, we'll probably say that we're just about giving up on following God because of how we feel. But what if I told you God absolutely cared about how you feel? In fact, what if I said that you could express your really real feel, like how you really feel on the inside, and be honest with God about how you feel, and he actually wants to hear them? Because believe it or not, it's true. And I know this because Jesus himself talked to God in this way. In this series, we've been looking at some of Jesus' last moments on earth and some of the best wisdom that he had during his last days. One of those is in Luke chapter 22. But before we get there, let me set it up. Jesus was with his close friends, the disciples, and he knew that they didn't know what he knew. Jesus knew what his disciples didn't know. He knew what was getting ready to happen to him. He knew he was getting ready to be arrested. He knew he was getting ready to be crucified. He knew he was getting ready to die. And he also knew that he was getting ready to resurrect. What was getting ready to happen to Jesus is the reason why we celebrate Easter today. Now, I don't know about you, but when I think about Jesus in this moment before his death, my first thoughts are, of course he's gonna throw on his Superman cape and he's getting ready to show up in this amazing moment. It's like, of course he's getting ready to jump to his call of being a superhero, to save the world, to save us from our sins, to go to the cross on our behalf, to show us that he loves us. I mean, come on, Jesus is perfect. So of course he's going into this moment fearless and courageous, right? I mean, take a look at this verse. Jesus stepped away from his disciples just before he was going to be arrested. And there, he stopped and prayed a really real prayer to God. Take a look at this verse. Father, if you are willing, please take this cup of suffering away from me. Yet, I want your will to be done, not mine. Not what I was expecting at all. Jesus didn't say, don't worry, God, I got it covered, I'm fine. This is a bad situation, but I'm gonna take care of it. No, Jesus prayed an honest prayer. Jesus started by asking God if there could be a different way. He prayed that God would allow something else to happen so that he wouldn't have to go through all this pain and all this suffering. He prayed that God would take this responsibility away from him. Can you imagine being in Jesus' situation here? I'm sure he was feeling so many different things in this moment. Maybe scared, anxious, or sad. As we continue to read the scriptures, Jesus' true feelings are revealed to us. We find out that not only did he ask God to change what was about to happen, but he also started to pray really, really hard. I know I would have been praying. I just would have been praying the whole night. He was desperate, he grieved and cried and begged for God to do something else. But you know what's amazing? In this difficult moment, Jesus got really real about how he felt with God. He was totally open and honest about his feelings, but through it all, Jesus also told God that he trusted his plan, that he knew what God's plan was, and he trusted God to carry him through it. Telling God how he felt didn't change what happened next to Jesus. His honesty in prayer didn't mean that he wasn't gonna still trust and follow God all the way to the cross. But what it did mean was that he could walk with God in confidence and honesty, knowing what God's plan was. I think we can learn a lot from these few words Jesus prayed in the garden thousands of years ago. But the main thing is this: you can be real about what you feel and still trust Jesus. We can be completely honest with God no matter what we're feeling. When we're upset, when we're scared, when we're in pain, when we're begging for another way, we can tell God those things in complete honesty. We can be real. After all, that's what Jesus did. But it doesn't stop there. Jesus just didn't express his feelings. He also declared his trust in God. You see, acknowledging that what we're feeling is hard or painful doesn't have to stop us from trusting God and following his plans for our lives. In fact, I think part of trusting God is being honest with him. How can we truly follow God with our lives if we can't even trust him with our feelings? That's good. That's good. The point is this: you can be real about what you feel and still trust Jesus. So what does this mean for us? Well, I think it means we follow Jesus' example in prayer. First, we get real with God about how we feel. We get comfortable being honest with God the way we would a trusted friend or a loved one. If you're mad, we tell him. If we're sad, we tell him. If we don't understand, we tell him. We feel all these feelings with God, and we can know that we aren't any less faithful or any less good in his eyes. We do it because we know he cares. But we have to keep moving forward. Just like Jesus, we have to be willing to still trust and follow. And I know it's hard, but we keep going with God, even if it doesn't change, because we know that we can trust him and he loves us. Start here this week. What's one thing in your life that you're struggling with? A circumstance that you want to change, a relationship that may be difficult, an emotion that you can't quite make sense of, a hurt in your life? Start by getting honest with God about that one thing. Maybe write it down or pray the prayer out loud or share with your small group leader. Then keep going with God. Keep praying, keep talking to your friends, keep showing up for small groups, keep doing whatever it is to stay close and connected with God. Because just as Jesus showed us, we can trust God no matter what. So remember, you can be real about what you feel and still trust Jesus. Now, as you head out today, I want you to think about this question. What's one reason I have a hard time being honest with God about how I feel? I'll see y'all later.